If I can't tell you. Okay. How do you like that? Better? Okay. Yeah. Wireless, yeah. New technology. Heard of those things. Okay, so now since I started talking, well, you shut up, so I guess I'll go forward. This is the special town meeting of the town of Lunenburg. Today is August 22nd. We welcome you all to our brand new high school. We're very excited to have you all here. I declare that we do have a quorum. The warrant has been published according to the records that are available at the town clerk's office. I would ask you at this point in time to remove your hats, which are not appropriate indoors in front of the American flag. And I would ask you to stand, address the flag, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Thank you. As I always do, I'm going to begin with the ground rules. Turn off your noisemakers. Those would be your cell phones or beepers, if anybody has beepers anymore. That includes any verbal noisemakers that are inappropriate for civil debate. That I mean, I don't want to hear any booing, hissing, hooting, and hollering. All comments and questions really should be addressed to me, and I will seek an answer for you from the necessary boards, committees, perhaps the moving party. Generally, in a civil debate, we don't refer to specific individuals by name. Instead, you refer to the previous speaker, the moving party, the member of the select board, etc. Your comments should be up in a microphone. There's microphones in each one of the aisles, and there's a microphone down front at the podium. State your name, state your street address. Selectmen and the Finance Committee may remain in their seats when they're addressing. Otherwise, you should be at a microphone and be recognized by me to stand there, and I will get to you in due turn. If the Selectmen or the Finance Committee or the Planning Board, etc., have more to say, they'll be allowed to speak repeatedly in order to be able to get you answers to your questions and answers for all of us. But if you've been in line and you've got repeat questions, please get to the back of the line so that I can allow everyone an opportunity to speak. The moving party will be allowed to speak first, given an adequate amount of time to make a presentation on the article. And thereafter, when you're in line, try to keep your comments somewhat brief so you can get home at a decent hour. Any amendments to the articles, other than simple changes, really should be in writing. There are forms at each one of the microphones, and we would ask you to write it out so that we make sure we get any amendments very clearly done. Moving the question is something that is very popular at all town meetings. It means to cut off debate. It must be by a 2/3 majority. I, the moderator, can rule that motion out of order if I don't think enough people have had a chance to speak on a particularly interesting topic. And that also must be done from a microphone. You may not simply stand up and move the question. The only time you can stand up and just address the body without being in a microphone if there's a technical or legal problem with how we're proceeding. And I will address that with you if it comes up at that time. But we do have town council here to assist us if that comes up. Every article of motion will be first put to a voice vote. I'll declare whether it has won or not. And if you challenge that, if you don't believe I've gotten it correct, 7 people can stand and say, I doubt it. And if 7 people stand and say, I doubt it, then we'll do hand count. And there are designated people in the auditorium to do the hand count. If you're looking for a reconsideration of a vote, something that has just passed or just failed, either side may ask for it to be reconsidered. It does not matter whether you were on the correct side or the wrong side as far as the way the vote went. But I will not permit that if there's been a large passage of time and a large passage of the amount of people in the auditorium. So, for example, if it was Article 1, we had 100 people here, and then you want to reconsider it when there's only 25 or 50 people left, we're not going to allow that. Guests should be on my right in the front. Obviously, guests did not get a little card to vote, and guests will obviously not be voting. We conduct our business in town according to town meeting time. It's a little bit like Robert's Rules of Order, specifically for towns. You can purchase a copy, you can get a copy at the library. So at this point in time, I believe we're ready to start, but before we do, I would like to call upon the Chairman of the Select Board, J.D. Toll.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Before we get into the business of this town meeting, I'd like to acknowledge somebody who is attending her last town meeting in the town of Lunenburg, our town manager, Ms. Terry LaFleur. Terry has served the town very well and been a real asset to the town of Lunenburg, the select board, a great colleague and a great friend. We wish her well.
I can tell you we're just enjoying all that attention, Kerry. Article 1 is before us. Mr. Toll.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $114,733 as follows. Add to line 13, Reserve Fund, the sum of $77,993, and add to line 79, School Department, the sum of $36,740, to amend the amounts voted under Article 15 of the May 7, 2016 Annual Town Meeting.
Is there a second? Selectman, what is your recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen recommend approval of this.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Pretty sure you said approval. Said approval? Thank you. Recommend approval. Need to work on her microphone. Okay, I believe Town Manager is going to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
I'll take another thank you, that's fine.
Well, nobody's going to be able to hear. Okay, now you can. So this item is before you this evening because as a result of the final settlement of the state's budget, there were some adjustments to the cherry sheet revenue or the state aid that the town receives as a result. There were several different changes in a bunch of the different line items for us, but the net result is that we will receive $114,733 more than we anticipated at the time that the budget was approved at the annual town meeting. So we're here this evening to propose two adjustments to you. The first is to increase line 79, the school department's budget, in the amount of $36,740. The reason that this request is before you is because one of the changes to the state's budget resulted in the loss of the kindergarten grant that the school receives on an annual basis and has received since fiscal 2012. It's not a part of the town's cherry sheet aid, but it is aid that we received that we lost. So we're looking to replace that at least for this year, and that's the reason for that proposed change. The other change then is to increase line 13, the reserve fund, in the amount of $77,993. And the reason that is being proposed is just to place that additional state aid in a reserve account because we don't have any proposed use for it, but we would like to be able to have access to it during the fiscal year if something happens. For instance, if we have a difficult winter and we exceed our snow and ice costs, we'd like to be able to access that money. If that is still available at the end of the fiscal year, then there would be a proposal likely to put that into the stabilization fund.
Anyone have any questions for the Town Manager on Article 1? I don't see anyone at the microphone, so I'll declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Requires 2/3, and I'll declare that we have got more than 2/3 vote, so that passes. Article 2, Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer from Article 15 of the May 7, 2016 annual town meeting, line 13A salary reserve fund, the sum of $6,385.96 to fund the first year of the FY16, FY18 Laborers International Union of North America, Public Employees Local 39, DPW unit, collective bargaining agreement dated July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2018.
Second.
There's a second. Select Board, what's your recommendation?
The Selectmen recommend approval.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval.
We're going to work on your microphone, I promise. Finance Committee recommends approval. Mr. Ubersoft, can you give me the number again?
$6,385.96.
So that's what's on the board. Okay, very good. Carrie, you going to make a presentation on this?
Yes. So this is a 3-year agreement covering fiscal year 16, which was last fiscal year, fiscal 17 and 18. It covers 10 full-time employees, and the pertinent components to this particular agreement are a 1.5% cost of living adjustment per year for each of the 3 years, an increased clothing and uniform allowance, an increase of $350 per year, some additional language that is beneficial to the town as the employer in several sections, including management rights, probationary period, and conditions of employment. And the request before you this evening is for you to consider authorization of the first year, which is fiscal 16. The cost for fiscal 16 is $6,385.96. This would be funded out of the already approved fiscal 17 salary reserve account. The additional costs associated with fiscal 17 will also come from that account, but that transfer can be authorized by the Finance Committee upon approval of the first year of the contract this evening.
Anyone have any questions on Article 2?
Mr. Moderator, just to
Mr. Ubersoft?
this article amount on the screen is different. The amount is, so we are looking at the $6,385.96.
It's the number that's on the big board up here, 6385.96, which is different than what's over here? Okay. So, other than the number, everything on Article 2 that's on my far right, Kathy's going to figure out how to change it. Otherwise, we're voting on 6385.96. Any other questions, comments? Declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Passes by more than 2/3, and I so declare it. Article 3, Mr. Alonso.
I move the town vote to pass over Article 3.
There's a second. Why are we passing it over, Mr. Alonso?
Police officers' collective bargaining agreement that has not been reached yet.
All those in favor of passing over Article 3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes over. Article 4, Mrs. Bertram.
I move the town vote to pass over Article 4.
Is there a second? Thank you. Tell us why we're passing it over, Mrs. Bertram.
Due to a typographical error, the correct language for the warrant article was not included in the printed warrant, therefore no action can be taken at this time. The warrant article will be resubmitted for consideration at the next annual town meeting or the special town meeting should one be scheduled prior to May of 2017.
Okay. And this is about the Cemetery Commission.
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments about Article 4? Seeing no one at the microphone, we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Ebersol,
I move that we take up Article 15 at this time.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Tell us why you'd like to take it out of order, Mr. Ebersol.
The applicant has this required action needs to be taken so that we can take action on it tomorrow evening at the Selectmen's meeting, assuming that the town meeting votes it, and wanted to make sure that this was taken care of in case we were to lose the quorum later in the meeting.
We have 121 people, you're all staying, right? Okay. To move something out of order requires a simple majority. All those in favor of taking Article 15 at this time, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Article 15 is now before you.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Ingersoll.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute a boundary line agreement with Elaine P. Rose to establish the common boundary line between the town-owned property located on Chestnut Street, Lunenburg, known as Marshall Park, and described in a deed recorded with Worcester North District Registry of Deeds in Book 291, page 497, and the property owned by Elaine Rose, located at 64 Chestnut Street, said Lunenburg, and described in the deed recorded with said deeds in Book 1974, page 89, as shown on the plan on file with the town clerk, and to release any right, title, and interest the town may have in land owned by Elaine Rose, and to accept a deed for general municipal purposes for any interest in land that Elaine Rose may have in land owned by the town on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deems appropriate, and to transfer the care, custody, management, and control of the land described above from the Board of Selectmen for park and playground purposes to the Board of Selectmen for general municipal purposes and for the purpose of disposition. And further, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the approval of such release and conveyance of the town's interest in said portion of Marshall Park under Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution of Massachusetts, if such approval is deemed necessary by the Board of Selectmen.
There's a second. Selectmen, your recommendation.
Selectmen recommend approval.
Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee finds no financial impact.
We heard that loud and clear. Planning Board, did you take a vote on this? Planning Board did not take a vote on this article. Okay, my notes say the town manager or town council are going to make a presentation. Town manager.
This is a request for town meeting to transfer property to the Board of Selectmen and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a boundary line agreement. An agreement is needed to settle a dispute between the town as the owner of Marshall Park and the owner of 64 Chestnut Street. Based upon the frontage dimensions in both deeds, there is an approximate 80-foot overlap, which is about 0.4 acres in question. The overlap was discovered after the town cut several trees down in and around the overlap area to construct a parking lot as part of a capital improvement project. The boundary line agreement will recognize the existing stone wall as the boundary between the park and 64 Chestnut Street, and in exchange for the agreement, the owner of 64 Chestnut Street will release any and all claims against the town. I do have a map here that may be somewhat difficult to read. Let me see. This line right here where the cursor is pointing is the existing stone wall. And if you follow the frontage on the deed along Chestnut Street over to that point, you will come here for the deed for 64 Chestnut Street. If you start over here and follow the frontage for the town of Lunenburg deed for Marshall Park, you come over to this point here, and this area in here is about an 80-foot wide strip, and this is the area in question. So the town is looking to just recognize the existing stone wall as the boundary in order to settle this particular issue between the two parties.
Anyone have any questions or comments about this article? Seeing no one at the microphone, I declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 5. Ms. Luck.
I move the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into one or more agreements for a term of up to 30 years with Solec Energy Development, LLC, or its assigned successors or affiliates for the purchase of energy and corresponding net metering credits generated by one or more privately owned solar voltaic facilities to be installed on the rooftops of the town's middle high school, and the Department of Public Works buildings. Such agreements to be on such terms and conditions and for such consideration as the Board of Selectmen deems in the best interest of the town, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to do all such other things as may be required or convenient to implement and administer such agreements.
Is there a second? Second. Selectmen, your recommendation.
We recommend approval.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Mr. Londo, you're going to make a presentation? That's why you're up at the mic?
I do.
Excellent.
John Londa, Director of Facilities for Lunenburg Public Schools. So I'm going to make some comments that just pertain to both Article 5 and 7 very briefly, and then I'll focus specifically on Article 5. So for FY17, fiscal year that just began on July 1, the town of Lunenburg, for its municipal buildings, will use about 2,215,000 kilowatt hours, and it will cost us roughly $550,000 for that electricity. We have been looking at developing strategies that keep our energy costs in check for municipal buildings by using a variety of measures, including adding rooftop solar, to also host net metering and energy conservation measures. So all three of those areas we've been working to develop. Article 5 talks to rooftop solar. So the warrant is to grant authority to the Board of Selectmen to enter into a long-term contract for rooftop solar for this building, middle high school, and the Department of Public Works building. The town of Lunenburg obtained a Massachusetts Solar Technical Assistance Grant last July and hired Robert Patterson Associates to help develop a strategy for moving forward on both the rooftop solar and the net metering possibilities. And we put out for bid in February of this current fiscal year, our current calendar year, a request for proposal. We had two different respondents. Select Energy came in as the most favorable of the two and has proposed the 361 kilowatt system for this building and a 35 kilowatt system for the Department of Public Works garage. This is proposed as a power purchasing agreement in which we would provide the roof space. We won't own the array and we won't be responsible for the maintenance. We are responsible to buy electricity it produces at a price that's specified in the contract, and we may obtain lease payments as well for the roof space. The solar developer will take tax credits and solar renewable energy credits, otherwise known as SRECs, as well as some other benefits that the town really can't use, such as depreciation on the asset. The design for Select for this building included using flat roofs as well as the two south-facing asphalt roofs, shingled roofs, pitched roofs, and will guarantee 85% of a 400,000 kilowatt hour production per year. The 35,000 kilowatt hours that they will produce at the Department of Public Works will meet all of that need for the DPW and would go on the 2012 building that was constructed alongside their main building. To put that into some perspective, for the middle school, high school, that will generate between 40 to 45% of the expected electricity needs for this building, and 100% for the Department of Public Works. The cost per kilowatt hour for the middle school, high school, as proposed, is 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour. It was proposed as a 20-year fixed rate. And in perspective, we're roughly paying around 11 cents per kilowatt hour currently. For the Department of Public Works, it was at a higher rate of 13.5%, but also a 20-year fixed rate. They've also proposed a $1,000 a month lease payment for the middle school, high school roof. The solar panels that would go on to the roof of the middle school, high school would be installed on the flat roofs, as well as the two south-facing asphalt shingle roofs. The flat panels would be as similar to the Turkey Hill Middle School, so likely not visible.
but they would be ballasted, so there would be weight that holds them in place. The installer would be required to take out a separate 2-year warranty on the roof. Will be required to have inspections from the roofing manufacturer to ensure that the existing warranty on the roof stays in place for its full period. The Department of Public Works has a standing metal seam roof, and the panels will be attached directly to those seams. The estimated savings for this project for the middle school, high school in year 1 will be $62,000, and it will also generate $12,000 in lease payments. The annual savings for the Department of Public Works will be $3,470. For the 20-year period, the middle school, high school project would save $1,463,000 and also provide a $240,000 lease payment. The 20-year savings for the Department of Public Works would be $90,215. Select Energy Development will be responsible for the interconnection fees. They have applied for the interconnection, and that process has started. My recommendation on this would be to recommend that it be approved so that the Board of Selectmen could enter into a contract for this long-term energy project.
Questions for Mr. Lund? Well, then come down to the microphone. We would be glad to hear you. Just give, hold on. You gotta give us your name. Where you
Joan Quinn, 70 Pratt Street.
Excellent.
Who will be paying for this? Where will the money be coming from?
So this is a power purchasing agreement, and the way a power purchasing agreement works is the solar developer provides the capital to put the project in place. And how they get paid is we buy the electricity that it produces. They are also able to use several things such as tax credits and depreciation on the asset. And they also get the SRECs. The SRECs are a variable priced commodity that can be bought and sold. And for every 1,000 kilowatt hours of production, they get 1 SREC. So that's an asset that would go to the developer. So what this does, instead of paying for electricity through Unitil or a third-party supplier, we would be buying electricity from the solar developer that has the solar panels on the roof. The benefit for that is, for the middle school, high school case in particular, we're paying a very low rate, but also there's very little distribution costs. The electricity is already here. So we save about 8 cents a kilowatt hour on distribution just in the first year. And of course, this is a long-term agreement. It's 20 years, and it's a fixed rate. So every year that distribution costs go higher or supply costs go higher, you save even more. So ultimately, it's being paid out of the town department's utility budget that they would otherwise be used to pay for electricity from Unitil or a third-party supplier. So there's no initial capital outlay by the town on this project.
So when these get old, or in 15 years, or however the expiration is, who's going to get rid of these?
So the solar developer will post a bond for the remove the panels off the roof. So this is initially a 20-year agreement. The panels at the 25-year mark will probably be producing about 80% of what they're rated at. So there will be degradation over time, and they put out less and less each year. At the end of the 20 years, the solar developer will be required to remove it, or we will probably go into some other arrangement, whether that be some new panels to go on the existing ballasted receivers for them, or we might take ownership of it and continue to operate it. But I think that is a question that will have to be dealt with, but it's pretty far out there. But there is language will be language in the contract that says that the sole developer will be responsible for removing it at the 20-year mark, unless we do something different.
You don't already have this appropriated in your budget, so are our taxes going to go up to support this?
The answer is no. In the budget, so in the school budget or in the municipal buildings budget, there is already money for electricity. So that's the piece that we're paying for is electricity. That's in the budget. So no, there won't be any tax increases. So this is a way of lowering the cost for electricity. And like I said, this is a similar project that we have done in the past. We did a power purchasing agreement on Turkey Hill Elementary School. We have a 106 kilowatt system on that school, which has been in operation for the last 5 years. That project is every year but one met its guaranteed production. The 1 year it didn't meet the guaranteed production, the developer reimbursed us for the lack of production in that 1 year. So it's a little bit different agreement than this one, but it's in the same model. It's a power purchasing. In that case, we had some money put forward. We had a grant for $150,000 that helped to pay for that initially, and that's a 15-year power purchasing agreement on Turkey Hill. So this is a 20-year, no money up front, low cost for the kilowatt hours of production. So I look at it as a way to keep our fossil fuel use low, keep our costs low, and help with managing our budgets.
Mr. Passios.
David Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I was contacted a number of weeks, maybe even months ago, in regards to these articles. And my only concern is that I happen to be one of the residents that has a solar project planned, and I'm in the moratorium area for Unitil. My understanding is that's only one circuit in town, but with the town adding capacity onto the other circuits, at some point, I'm guessing that those circuits are also going to reach capacity, and a moratorium will be placed on those circuits, leaving the residents unable to put solar panels on their roof. I understand that Unitil is moving slowly towards correcting that issue, and they're promising by the end of the year, but I've lost a full year's production on my proposed panel.
I think Mr. Alonso would like to address that, Mr. Alonso.
Okay.
Yes, so the two circuits that have a moratorium because they need upgrading, we have been told from Unitil that once they are upgraded, and they have committed to do that by the end of this calendar year, that is a one-time thing. There is a cap. The cap is well beyond anything that would be on, that anybody would put on unless a huge commercial system came on. That's number one. So this system will not jeopardize that after that circuit is on board. And number two is, as far as any state caps on electricity, residential projects are not part of it. So there's no restriction on residential projects. So once the upgrades from Unitil are in place for the two circuits that cover this area, and actually 75% of the town, won't be a concern. This project will not impact you or any other residential project at all.
Okay, just one more quick question. That stated that way, there is no chance that the circuit that these systems are going to be on are going to be anywhere near capacity, or they're going to have problems with infrastructure on that circuit. I understand what you're saying about the two that are in moratorium now, but are there any issues coming up down the road on the circuit that these panel systems are going on to that you're aware of?
There are two circuits that are out of moratorium right now, and they cover 75% of Lunenburg.
Does that include the systems that were proposed?
But from the map that we were shown, I believe that is true, yes.
Yeah, these two proposed rooftop solar are in the moratorium area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else on this article? I don't see anyone at the microphone, so I declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 5?
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Rogers, if it's a point of order, go right ahead.
My point of order is, shouldn't we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
I thought we got a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
They did, I was sleeping.
Well, please don't. Finance, give it to him again, nice and loud.
We recommend approval.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All those in favor of Article 5, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 6, stay where you are, Mr. Wanda. Article 6, Mr. Toll.
I move that the town vote to pass over Article 6.
Is there a second? Why are we passing over Article 6, Mr. Toll?
Article 6 dealt with a pilot or payment in lieu of taxes provision for the solar, and there is none.
Any questions on Article 6? Declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of passing over Article 6, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are passed over unanimously. Article 7, Mr. Alonso.
I move the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into one or more agreements for a term of up to 30 years with Borrego Solar Systems, Inc., or its assigned successors or affiliates for the purchase of energy and corresponding net metering credits generated by privately owned solar photovoltaic facilities. Such agreements to be on such terms and conditions and for such consideration as the Board of Selectmen deems in the best interest of the town, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to do all such other things as may be required or convenient to implement and administer such agreement.
Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Rogers, I'm asking Finance, what's your recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawler, tell us about Article 7. I think you kind of touched on it with Article 5, but tell us what's different or what you need to know about Article 7.
For Article 7, you may have seen a note listed in the warrant on Article 7 that it was a solar facility located in Fitchburg, 50% provided to the town, 50% will be allocated to the community. That's incorrect. This is, that was the case with the Nexamp net metering project. This proposal is not a community solar project. It's strictly for municipal buildings. So once again, we had Robert Patterson Associates, based upon getting the Massachusetts Solar Technical Assistance Grants last July. They came across this opportunity and brought it to our attention. Borrego Solar is in the process of developing a rooftop solar project in an industrial park in Fitchburg. The town of Lunenburg was asked to be the host for this project. In this project, we won't own the array. We will not be responsible for maintenance of the equipment. We will be responsible for buying the net metering credits produced by that solar array at a price specified in the contract. Right now, that price that we're talking about is 13.75 cents per kilowatt hour. The solar developer will take any tax credits and any solar renewable energy credits, or SRECs. This is very much like the net metering agreement that we approved for Nexamp, which was 270 kilowatts. This is a bigger system. It will generate 777,360 kilowatt hours in a year and be rated at 488 kilowatts AC. To put this into some perspective, we said we're going to use about 2.2 million kilowatt hours in a year. The bulk of this would be split between school and town buildings, the town municipal buildings, and we applied as credits directly against the electric accounts, and we will then make a payment to the solar developer for what is roughly 62% of the value of that credit. So the discount to us is about 38%, pretty substantial. Just like to put this also in comparison, so the Nexamp project was about a 25% discount, so this is substantially discounted. We expect that it would be complete in this calendar year as well. And we still, even if we approve this net metering agreement, we will still have a capacity of another 770,000 kilowatt hours that we can contract for on the net metering agreement. The net metering laws in Massachusetts are meant to be incentives for town to promote solar development, and that's why they represent such bargains for us. Currently, a net metering credit is worth about 22 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're going to pay 13.75 cents for that, and keep the difference. Once again, it'll go in on electric accounts, and so it'll show up as a reduction in future year budgets under electric usage for schools and for town buildings.
Any questions of Mr. Launder on Article 7? Seeing no one at the microphone, declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 7, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 8, somebody from the planning board. Somebody from the planning board. Anybody from the planning board. All you gotta do is read. Excellent.
Hello, yes, planning board.
Hold on a second. Do we have, let's see what we can do technologically. See if we can get something up on the screen. Article 8, the actual article is to my far right on the smaller screen. And I'm hoping the presentation will appear about, not there.
There were no slides. It's all words printed in the.
Okay, so there's no slide? Okay. So, introduce yourself, Mr. Allison.
Hi, Matthew Allison, Chair of Planning Board.
And where do you live?
305 Flat Hill.
Very good. Now you're going to move Article 8. Go ahead.
I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaw, Section 4.17, Village Center District, by relettering Section 4.17.5D as 4.17.5C, or take any action relative thereto.
Is there a second?
Second.
Selectmen, your recommendation?
Board of Selectmen recommend approval.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee reports no direct financial impact.
No impact. Planning Board, what was your vote?
The vote was 5-0 to support.
5-0 to support. And Mr. Bernie, you're going to make the presentation?
Very brief background.
Brief is good.
At the May 2015 town meeting, the village center district was passed. Somewhere in the formatting, there was a superfluous C added next to the special permit criteria approval. So we're looking to remove the C and move it down to the prohibited uses tab. There was a one-page handout for Article 8 on the table out there that hopefully better expresses what the article was meant to do than what is currently printed in the warrant. It shows the striking of C next to special permit, the striking of D next to the following uses, and the replacement of D with C.
Anyone want to ask Mr. Bernie about his C? Seeing no one at the microphone, declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 8, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? You got it, Mr. Bernie. Passed unanimously. Article 9. You're up again, Mr. Allison.
Yes, Article 9. I vote to amend the zoning bylaw, Section 8.4, Development Plan Review, by deleting in Section 8.4.2.1E the words graded and inserting the words granted, and by amending the phrase site plan review wherever it appears in Section 8.4 to site plan approval.
Is there a second? Second. Selectmen, your recommendation.
Selectmen recommend approval.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee reports no direct financial impact.
Planning Board, what was your vote?
Vote was 5-0 in favor.
5-0. Tell us about this.
Again, this is a Scrivener's change. The word graded made it through. It should be granted because no one grades a special permit. And site plan approval is the title of the article. Unfortunately, throughout the article, site plan review was included. Again,
Again, there was a multiple page handout that shows the multiple strike-throughs and replacements, not changing the tone or character of the bylaw, simply the word approval is replaced with, or review is replaced with approval.
Zoning changes require 2/3. I don't see anyone asking questions about this Scrivener's error. All those in favor of this article, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. You're on a roll, planning. Article 10.
Article 10, I vote to amend the zoning bylaw by deleting the entirety of section 4.12, Wayland Overlay District.
Is there a second? Second. Selectman, your recommendation.
We're going to hold our recommendation until after the presentation.
Remind me to get it from the FinCom.
Finance Committee will hold for a presentation.
Will hold as well. Mr. Rogers, you'll remind me. What was the vote for the planning board?
The planning board vote was 4-1 in favor.
4-1 in favor. So tell us about this article.
So this article looks to remove section 4.12 from the protective bylaw, the Wayland Overlay District. This is a district that was put into place in 2005-2006 era. At the time of the public hearing for this in which the planning board voted, there were several property owners from the district in attendance. There were, I'll say, 2 or 3 major concerns about the removal of the district. The first concern was the issue of the Emerald Place development, the status that development would fall under, being that it's currently under development. It is currently under an approved special permit by the planning board. All facets of the development are covered by the special permit that was issued in 2006. Upon discussion with town council, the opinion was rendered that they would enjoy all benefits of the existing special permit moving forward. Upon completion of the project would be considered an pre-existing non-conforming use and continue to enjoy legal status under the special permit, including any and all provisions outlined within the approval of the special permit. Regardless of whether the district exists or not, the special permit was approved, is legal, and moves forward under that. There was also a question raised of an issue known as spot zoning, where a property owner is singled out for benefit or detraction under a bylaw. The removal of the district, per the opinion from town council, would not constitute an issue of spot zoning. There was a decade, give or take, that any property owner within the district had with which to exercise their rights. If they had not exercised them, it's not incumbent on the town to allow those rights to exist in perpetuity. And so the board felt that the removal of the Wayland District provided a benefit for the town based on the lack of clarity and specificity included in the text of the bylaw for approving any projects that would exist for property within the district that could be developed. At the public hearing, the planning board did express an interest in working with any property owners and residents on developing a second Wayland overlay district that would hopefully be presented at the annual town meeting in the spring.
Thank you, Mr. Burney.
Sir, Bud Cole, 102 Carousel Lane. I would like to request that Mike Sagino, the building inspector, give his view on this article.
Sure. Mr. Savage, would you like to address the article?
Mr. Moderator.
Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I think most of you know me. I'm Mike Savageau. I'm the building official for the town of Lunenburg. I've been the building inspector and the zoning officer for about 14 years now. I was on the planning board. The Board of Selectmen for 11 years prior to that, and the Conservation Commission for 1 year. Just as a little side note, I did go to college for urban and regional planning also. So I do have a little bit of planning background. So we just heard from the planning director about the Emerald Place project, and they want to take that overlay district away. So I'm going to try to be as brief as I possibly can because I know I can talk for hours. I'm going to kind of give you in the layman's terms what's going on. I don't think we should get into the minutia of the little details, but the general overview, I think Adam has stated what he believes and what apparently the town council believes. Was that in writing, Adam? Did you get a written opinion from town council? No written opinion. Okay, I do have one from the, that's okay, but I do have a written opinion from town council when the project was originally approved in 2006. The problem that I see here is that when we created the Whalum Overlay District, we allowed basically the Whalum parcel to be the overlay district. Now, inadvertently, there was about 8 small, what are considered pre-existing non-conforming lots that were brought into the district. Those pre-existing non-conforming lots deserve no right whatsoever out of the underlying district, which is commercial, and they deserve no right under the overlay district. So they were brought in accidentally, but I'm going to say on purpose to protect the town, okay? But they were brought in accidentally because nobody gave a lot of thought to it, and they get no benefit from the Whalum Overlay District. They have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and so won't Emerald Place if you take the district away. Town council and the planning board and the planning director believe that they will be pre-existing non-conforming at that time. I have a different opinion other than town council, and I have a different opinion from the planning board and the planning director. My opinion, so that everyone knows, the way it works is I'm the zoning officer. I make the opinions on zoning for the town. Now, when you, as the public, call me up, or you build a house, or you need to know an offset, I tell you what that is. I tell you what you can do under the bylaw. I tell you what you can't do under the bylaw. I'm the only guy that can tell you that. The planning board can't tell you about zoning. They completely are separate from zoning. So when you call me up, you kind of listen to me, because you do what I say. Now, the planning board, I had a meeting with the planning board about a week and a half ago. And during that discussion, and they wanted to get together with me so that they could discuss zoning enforcement and it was talked about, the projects that are out there that have been granted under special permits. Because we have to make sure, and I'm the zoning officer, and I happen to be the catch-all, whether I have time to do it or not, I happen to be the catch-all that goes out and has to make sure Emerald Place is in compliance, that the Holly House is in compliance. And there's a good example. We had a special permit was given to the Holly House. I'm sure a lot of you remember the history of that. You know, in the Holly House, the selectmen were going to pull their liquor license way back when because they were out of compliance with their special permit, with the number of functions they were able to have. They had 103, they were supposed to have 100. So the history, just giving you a little history so you understand in layman's terms. There was a woman that called me a week and a half ago, a nice elderly woman, and she wanted to know, she lived in the Whalum district, not in the overlay. Well, we know because that's a Whalum Park project, she didn't live there. She lived on Whalum Road. Very nice lady. I talked to her for over 20 minutes. She asked me what an overlay was. And I tried to explain it to her. And she's here today. Thank you for pointing yourself out. And a lot of you here today may not know what an overlay is. Most of us here do not understand zoning, and before I became a zoning officer, I had to try to understand it. So what I'm going to tell you is 100% based on fact. And when I say fact, I want 2 things to be very clear here. It's not Mike Savageau talking to you. It's the zoning officer. My opinion is the only opinion that technically, legally matters. Town council will tell you, I have to make a zoning determination. I do that to the best of my ability, 100% unbiased. Anyone that's ever been in my office knows how I do it. I am as fair can be. Okay, so now we have a situation where we granted a special permit to the Emerald Place project. If you want to get real quick into the spot zoning issue, that's not an issue for tonight. The spot zoning issue, that letter, my opinion letter, which was disregarded by the planning board, and they have that right to disregard it. What should happen is they go to the zoning board and they challenge my determination to see if I'm in error. And if I'm in error, thank God for correcting it before you get too far. And I'm all for correcting errors. But we do compliance We make sure that people comply. So what happened when the planning board in 2006 did the first Emerald Place project? They granted it based on 8 units per acre. The bylaw gave them the ability to do that. So they granted 8. They went to a section of the bylaw in the overlay district they should have never gone to. They should have never went to the section.
Yes, Mr. Barney. Okay. I don't think that's that's not a point of order, but I do think we need to stay focused, Mr. Savage.
I'm going to read a couple of statements out of the books that I got out of the planning board, and then the town can make their determination. Obviously, the planning board and the planning director do not agree with my opinion. I respect that. But for the sake of this town, I'm going to read a few things. Now, we have prosecuted people for what could happen if you take the overlay district away. In my opinion, as your zoning officer, that project was granted in 2006 and modified illegal, non-compliant. Illegal, non-compliant is different than grandfathered, pre-existing, non-conforming grandfather. If I'm wrong, they will become pre-existing, non-conforming. If I'm right, if my opinion's right, then they're going to be, and have been since they were granted, and I'll tell you why, illegal, non-compliant. The planning board granted them 8 units per acre. They originally represented they had over 31 acres. If you take an acre away that was reserved for a commercial development in the old parking lot of Whalen Park where the tower was, right? You take that acre away, that was reserved under a directive recorded at the Registry of Deeds that said that that acre was reserved out of the project to do a future commercial development, which is fantastic. They got 6 acres over there. And a lot of it's, and there's like 3.7 acres in the commercial district. What a great place for a commercial project in jeopardy. Can't go back because they are lacking 1 acre in their count. So the planning board granted the special permit to build 240 condos based on 30.18 acres. There is an ALTA survey done that shows where all the land that Emerald Place owned is, what's in the overlay district, what is not in the overlay district, and they come up with 30.18 acres. I have an opinion letter here, I'm not going to read it, based on, yeah, they'll be in compliance if they get waivers. It is also my opinion that the applicant's proposed modification will meet the requirements of the Whalen Overlay District if the planning board finds that the proposed modifications meet the requirements of the design criteria for the requested changes under the planning board's rules and regulations, or waivers to those requirements are granted. That was back in what, 2006? No, the modification, this letter here, it was one of my opinion letters probably in 2006 or 2010 on the modification. So they were granted 240 units. It was based on 31.64 acres. The ALTA survey showed that they only had 30. 30 times 8 is 240. Forgot to minus the acre for the commercial development. Recorded that it would be taken out. Can't use it. You can't double dip. I wish I could put my garage over here at the same time, put my house there too. You either use the underlying district, which happens to be commercial in that area, or you use the overlay. So what happened? They go and they grant 8. They're missing an acre. When you take all the little tiny percentages of all the little lots that the Whalen project picked up, in the meantime, to do the modification, they miss it by 5 units. I gave them 238 building permits. At their request, they were granted 240. They took 2 less. Based on the granting and the findings and the directives that are recording, they should only have 233 units, is what they should have. Adam will say, oh, but you know something? Nobody appealed it. Well, you know something? My opinion on that is an appeal is an appeal. Everybody has a right to appeal. You can appeal something that was issued wrongly, or you can appeal something that was issued correctly. That's just an appeal. And you know, for 10 years you hear, well, it's been there 10 years, we should take it away. You know, if you think you should take it away, evaluate it first. What did we hear as a town as the proposed reasons for taking it away? Some of them are, well, it's bad bylaw. Gotta get rid of it, gotta get rid of it now. Well, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen when you get rid of it if you decide to do that. But some of the reason is that it's a bad bylaw, right? And, I don't know. So, I've been eating this thing up for like 2 weeks.
I can tell you're passionate about it, Mr. Savageau. Just give us the bottom line.
Okay, so let me read
Because
these
there's other
things.
people
Okay,
want
so
to
we have
speak,
a legal,
okay?
so the bottom line is this.
Thank you.
The bottom line is this, and I'll
Thank
read a brief thing at the end. The bottom line is, I believe as your zoning officer, that the Whalen Park project, based on fact, based on documents, based on what you can go and read, out of the books, out of the law, and out of the granting, and out of the modification, I'm basing it on black and white and fact. The fact is, I believe Emerald Place is and was illegal, non-compliant from day one when it was granted, because they were granted 8 units an acre. They were only supposed to have less than that, not 240, 233. Now, to me, that's kind of called out of compliance. That means you're not compliant with your granting. Now, the planning board at that meeting wanted me to go review, and they even said, we'll help you read all the special permits, right? So, here's what happened.
Tell me about the article.
Yep. On the article,
I get that you say it years ago. I get that there was a problem years ago. Tell me what the article is going to do or not do so we can figure out how to vote.
Whatever you do, do not get rid of the overlay district. If you want to know the layman's terms, do not get rid of the overlay district. We have a legal opinion that was rendered. Copeland and Page was not the attorneys when this was granted. They admit that they had no involvement in it. So I would think you would want at least your town council to review stuff, because what I'm finding doesn't, in my opinion, help the town much. Legal counsel bracket Lucas on parcel that's in question with the 1 acre. Consequently, it is my legal opinion that in the absence of the sufficiency of a dimensional variance or legal tenable grounds for the granting of a dimensional variance, which we do allow in our bylaw, right? Tenable ground of grant dimensional variance, the only method proposed, right? The only method of allowing for the proposed project is for the planning board to amend the overlay district of the bylaw, which would include the additional 2.7 acres, which seems to have caused the problem. Okay, to the overlay district, that would include the 2. This amendment would be presented at town meeting. This never took place. So your legal written opinion, lawyers always going to tell you, you got it in writing? Well, you don't have it in writing with this town council right now. You had it in writing with the town council that actually reviewed the document. And it's saying you needed a special permit dimensional variation because you're out of compliance with the granting. Now, when you're out of compliance with the granting, you're considered illegal non-compliant. I'm going to get really to the chase. I'm going to read right out of the planning board's office, out of their book. Throughout this chapter, unless, okay, a voluntary act by the owner, let me start here, okay? It says, to receive the protections, now, the argument is, right now, what's in front of the town is town council believes, I don't know if they have all the details, if they haven't reviewed the documents, but they believe that this will become pre-existing non-conforming when you take the overlay district away. If you succeed in getting the overlay district taken away, what happens is you can't double dip. The lot area was used for the lot calculation. You have no overlay bylaw to correct the current problem. And they will stay. And if they're not pre-existing, if they're not illegal non-compliant, which I believe they are from the onset, then they will be illegal non-compliant once the overlay is taken away. That's no different than taking land away. They put a site-specific project together as one project, all separate parcels. Now, generally, when they touch and they're non-conforming, there's something called infectious invalidity. You can't get rid of it, or this is illegal non-compliant, what's left. My belief is, if you go in, because parcels were put together by a special permit to be as one project, site-specific, referenced over and over and over, what potentially could happen here is that by eliminating the overlay district, you damage the project because it will become illegal non-compliant, similar to the Cronin case.
So that's your argument. Excellent. Thank you. That was your point. Excellent. Thank you.
Good enough. Thank you.
Ann Gilman, 131 White Street. Very basic question. What is an overlay district?
Mr. Burke.
Specifically, please.
An
What is-
overlay-
And what is this one? Draw me a picture. Thank you.
I'll start with the first question. An overlay district is, I'm trying to judge. Okay, most of you are my age or older, so you all remember the transparencies from school. An overlay district is taking a transparency and laying it over the underlying zoning district and saying, in this area, you can either use what exists underneath or this new set of rules. Generally, it crosses several districts, and generally it targets a very specific area that the town is looking to have a specific type of development or entice development to. Generally, an overlay district offers a more dense or wider variety or less restrictive set of uses in exchange for additional requirements of public space, aesthetic character, or something that would be of a community benefit. And the idea is to take an area where maybe you can only build single-family homes or big box commercial and try and attract a mixed-use development with some civic space in order to help develop that area, but do so in a way that the town can help guide.
The lady wants to know specifically.
Now I'm getting to this one.
Excellent.
This specific overlay district is a piece of legislation that was designed to aid in the redevelopment of the former Whalen Park. It specifically increases the density of residential that's allowed in the area. It also allows for a limited series of commercial uses, most by special permit. This is a two-page district that has almost no specific design criteria. It has very little information on density outside of a provision for waivers requiring the density to be capped at a certain number. And again, I think the intent was to foster the redevelopment of the Whalen Park after the closure and after it's sitting dormant for a number of years and essentially becoming a public safety and public health hazard due to whatever factors led to that. And that's what the current legislation does.
Okay. Sir.
JJ Cote, 371 Northfield Road. I think this is a question for Mr. Savageau. I understand that there's some disagreement as to what the outcome of this would be, but if I'm understanding this correctly, if the overlay district were repealed, someone would be harmed. Is that the property owners, is that the town, or is that some other party?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Okay. The property owner could get hurt by this because his property, if it's rented, it potentially could. I'm not a lawyer, and I do kind of on a board of directors at a credit union, but I'm not the financial wizard either. But I would think if something's pre-existing non-conforming, it might be a little harder. Maybe they can answer that, but I don't know what the financing is over there. But I mean, in some cases, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae could make life difficult for you. But taking the overlay district away, in my opinion, is a form of infectious invalidity that basically says that you have to put things together for zoning compliance. And if you take them apart, you get what's called infected by the zoning misbehavior. We have a case, the Cronin case, we won in 3 courts of law.
No, Mr. Savageau, we're not going to get into that.
Okay, well, just wanted, if you don't, okay. So basically, yeah, they could be harmed. The developer that has the only piece that's left in the overlay district, there's only 3.5 acres left in the overlay district that you have. And that parcel was brought in to the overlay district as part of the Whalen property. It was probably brought in to develop it under the overlay. So why would you get rid of an overlay to create a new one, which you probably don't want an overlay over there to begin with? What do you want, more density?
Thank you.
for open space. But yeah, everybody will get harmed. I think everybody gets harmed, town included, if you don't pass over this up. That's my opinion.
Got it.
Pamela Connor, 52 Fish Street. Could I request Gary Carson to speak on the subject?
Sure. Tell us who you are, sir, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen of town meeting, I'm Gary Crossan. I'm one of the members of management of Emerald Place Development Company, LLC. I'm here to speak on behalf of Emerald Place. You can see that from an Emerald Place perspective, I feel like we're a little bit whipsawed here between the planning board and the building inspector. So let me just sort of focus my remarks on the risk points for Emerald Place. And with the moderator's permission, I'd ask that my remarks be considered as addressing the next 5 items, which are all related to this Whalum overlay.
That's fine, but we'll vote on them separately.
So Emerald Place opposes each of the next 5 articles. We found out about this initiative last month by happenstance, actually, because we did not receive formal notification of it. We were alerted to it by a member of our community. We took an opportunity to go before the planning board at its last meeting and inquire as to what was going on. We were assured at that time by the planning board that it wasn't their intent to have any negative impact on the Emerald Place community, the Emerald Place development. But now we've been told by the building inspector that it will have a negative impact on the development. In fact, as recently as last week in a meeting, he told us that it was his intention to tell us to cease construction on the project, even though it's currently ongoing, to the point where I agreed with the building inspector to voluntarily stop construction of new units on the project until we resolve this issue. We've also been told by our own legal counsel, Rubin and Rudman in Boston, that there is a potential for negative impact on the project. And thus, the community, both in the nearly completed residential piece of it and also across the street in any future commercial development across Electric Avenue, might be negatively impacted. Would have negative financial implications to Emerald Place and might very well have negative implications to the town as well if that commercial parcel is not developable in the future. We've tried very hard to work with the Lunenburg community ever since we acquired the site in 2009. And I might add, by the way, the 240 units on the site have been the density that's been permitted on that site since it was first permitted in 2006 by a company that we have no connection to at all. We came in and picked up this project at the tail end of the market crash in 2008. And we then went back before the planning board in 2010, getting another special permit, or I should say a modified special permit. And again, at that time, we were told we would have 240 residential units and the opportunity to do the commercial parcel across the street. So I would suggest to you that we've been here in the most cooperative spirit possible to develop that property, and I respectfully suggest we've done a pretty good job. I know there are some in town that think otherwise, but I think on balance, one would have to concede we've done a pretty good job with the project. We are substantial contributors to the Lunenburg tax base, while we make only modest use of municipal services, very little use, for instance, of the school system. So it's our position that the matter of deleting the overlay district is a very complicated one that's obviously creating some disagreement among town officers. The consequences of its elimination should be studied very carefully. So we would ask you to either defeat these 5 warrant articles that are next coming up, 10 through 14, or to refer it back for further study before taking any precipitous action tonight by eliminating the overlay district, which may have very significant negative consequences to Emerald Place, to the town, to the other developer out there who owns the 3.5-acre parcel. Mr. Moderator, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crossman. Don't go too far, just in case somebody wants to ask you a specific question. Sir.
Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. I will be extremely brief. And my strong recommendation to this body is that we not do anything that would jeopardize the town. I understand that there are conflicting opinions and views, which is okay. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take some time, think this thing through, talk about it, discuss it, and come back with a recommendation that everybody can live with, that will not cost us anything in terms of legal fees. I strongly recommend that we pass over this or defeat it so that we'll have that time to do that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
What do you have against legal fees?
Spoken like a true lawyer. Richard Mayu, 88 Laurel Lane. People ask me where I live. I say I live across from where the roller coaster used to be. So I've been a butter to Emerald Place, have watched the deterioration of the park, have watched with some fear and trepidation to start with the building of Emerald Place because it's a lot of units. But it has had, in my view, surprisingly, a limited impact, especially on the pond itself, which is another issue. But they've done a good job, and I was there at the creation of the Whalum Overlay District, and it was, you know, the late Marion Benson had that all set up, and it looked pretty good. And, you know, 10 years later, there may be some issues with it. But to echo Mr. Rogers, really, at this point in time, with this difference of opinion between the people who are on the planning board and the zoning officials, et cetera, it doesn't seem like this has all been well thought out. I would think it's time probably to soon call the question and vote it down.
Sir. Paul Schreiber, 63 Chestnut Street. I agree with Mr. Rogers' statement, and also I think it should include this disagreement with the legal counsel, past and present, and if we spend time to review the situation, then it should include the legal counsel's opinion. Thank you.
If you're imagining the lawyers can never agree.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, young lady. You're welcome.
My name is Joy Ruth Cohen. I'm at 64 Great Pond Road in Lunenburg. My home is in Emerald Place. I've heard about the negatives for the establishment. I've heard about it for the town. I want to know what are the implications for me as a renter there? What do I need to be aware of should this be passed? My dog and I are quite safe there, and I want to know what exactly, how this will impact me as a renter. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Crosby, you can take a stab at it. Maybe Mr. Burney would like to address that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think, speaking from the project development perspective, ma'am, we would expect it would have no impact directly on you or our existing renters.
What about the dog?
The dog?
Dog's okay too?
As the owner of 2 dogs, your dog is fine. But we don't know what the implications are to the broader project, whether we'll have to continue to keep the construction that's going on there now in a state of interruption, or whether we'll be allowed to continue. And so I think there's a great deal of uncertainty to whatever might happen out at Emerald Place and whatever might happen across the street at the commercial lot until we get some sort of clear understanding of the implications of these warrant articles.
Mr. Burney, did you want to address that?
I think I would echo Mr. Cross's statement that it shouldn't have any impact on the residents of Emerald Place. I would also go back to my original statement that through discussion with town council, I don't believe it would have an impact on the ability of Emerald Place to continue to develop the project under the special permit that they currently have, including the commercial portion, regardless of any calculation issues. There's a special permit that was issued, is outside of the legal appeal period, continues to be legal, and has been good enough for building permits to be issued over the past 5 to 6 years. And you know, I guess I would ask town council to speak on the validity of a special permit, regardless of any imperfections in the language or calculations of the actual written document if it were done in an appropriate process and had been outside of the appeal period.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Moderator. Obviously, it's a preliminary statement. Mark Rich from KB Law. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that reminder. I do think we're getting a little far afield in terms of the article itself, but to bring it back around, I think Mr. Bernie's made a number of very accurate statements. The project is currently under a special permit. Special permit has been in place for 10 years now. It's well past any appeal point, so it is an effective special permit. The development is being conducted under that special permit, and so at this point, the removal of the Lake Whalum Overlay District, as it's been described by Mr. Bernie, would not impact that special permit. The special permit was granted whether there were any deficiencies in that special permit previously. The special permit is currently in place. I don't understand the building inspector's reference to, well, an appeal is an appeal. That's the legal process. And no one has availed themselves of that legal process. That permit remained. It was not timely appealed, and so it's currently in effect. So that's to concur with Mr. Bernie's position on that one. Permit currently exists as is in effect.
You get a chance. She's in line.
Sharon Albert, 5 Pond Street. I don't know how much more development we need. There's almost no open space anymore. Do we have to put a house on every piece of grass? How many units do we need? It seems like everything, even the beach is developed now. Kids used to be able to ride up and down the road. It's like everything's developed. I think it's enough.
Thank you. Sir.
Jim Levesque, 33 Lancaster. I'm curious, is there a sense of urgency to having this resolved today? Since there seems to be such a conflict of opinion. And if there's not, then can we proceed with?
Mr. Bernie.
I guess I would.
Why now?
I would defer to the 5 elected officials who placed the item on the article. I'm representing their interests and.
Well, you can caucus with your planning board if you wish.
Then I would request a caucus.
Why don't you, sir? Tell me.
I'd like to ask Mr. Bernie the converse of the question I asked Mr. Savager. What's the benefit to the town or to other parties of becoming over the district?
Well, I think that the planning board is looking at Emerald Place as having an existing approved special permit that carries on being legal. So I don't know that there is a benefit to them, but from the planning board's perspective, there is no harm because they're operating under something that's approved, that they have been operating under for the past 5 years. It wouldn't change. They'd have the ability to continue and finish the development as it exists and as it was approved. The board feels that the benefit to the town is removing a piece of legislation that, for all of the positive intent, is lacking in some significant features, and further developments under this bylaw leave the town in a position where they're dealing in ambiguity. And every approval for anything other than a single-family home would be a negotiation and is a special permit, which, if any of you aren't aware, a special permit is subjective under Mass General Law and allows the planning board to make a judgment subjective to the members of the board at the time. And any subjective judgment is open to questioning and does put forth the possibility of legal fees through appeal based on the lack of specificity in the bylaw and the subjective nature of special permit.
Why don't you conference with your planning board? Mr. Alonso, and I'll get to you, I promise. Mr. Alonso wanted to address.
With your permission, I'd like to hear what the planning board would like to do after they caucus, and then if I can reserve my comments till then.
Reserve your comments then. And you're on the planning board, so you got a caucus. Sir.
Jimmy Harris, Whalum Road. I have a question for Mike. Is he still down there? Is he here?
Oh, yeah. Mike, run out.
The other 3.2 acres or whatever, that doesn't belong to Emerald Place. Somebody's applied for a permit to build there.
Somebody did apply to build on the 3.5 acre lot, which is the only remaining lot to be built on. They could not come to an agreement with the planning board. Apparently the planning board wanted 14 units and they wanted 18. They couldn't come to agreement, so they were encouraged to withdraw. So
Is
they
that
did
the reason
withdraw.
why they're trying to get rid of the overlay district now, because they don't want that person to build on that land?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just
Good.
Just wondering, thank you.
I don't think you should be putting your opinion into their mouth.
But you know, getting back to that whole, the whole subjectivity nature, if I could. I mean, we just heard the planning director tell you about you're dealing with ambiguity, and that's why they want to change the overlay district. You're dealing with ambiguity. He's admitting it right now that you are dealing with ambiguity. And a bylaw, I'm telling you, cannot be ambiguous. And when it's ambiguous and subjective judgment is another term used, that's what the planning board used to make their determination, subjective judgment. You can't be it's 10, it's 4, it's 6. You gotta be uniform. Mass General Law, Chapter 48 says zoning districts need to be uniform. There is nothing uniform about this. Again, pass over this article. There is too many questions out there, mine included. What if I'm right? What if I'm wrong? Nobody has come to me until the 11th hour to discuss this.
Thank you, Mr. Savageau. Thank you. Mr. Barney, what's the planning board got to say after some of this debate? I will.
4 of the 5 members feel that removal or moving the question this evening is the appropriate measure. They felt that based on a number of zoning opinions that have been issued, they don't feel that they have a clear understanding of moving forward under this article, and that they feel that tonight is the night that it needs to, it's not a, let's look at it and see. They feel that the article itself is flawed, or the bylaw itself is flawed and needs to be.
They want to go forward on their
That is
articles.
correct.
Got it. Thank you. Let me get to Mr. McQuaid.
Sure. I'll be brief. Damon McQuaid, 29 Brookview Terrace, member of the planning board. For me, the missing part of this conversation is why the planning board proposed this move. It's not just because it's a bad bylaw. It's because every time we come into contact with this bylaw, we have residents before us in public hearings expressing to us how this bylaw has failed them, and how, when it was pitched to them back in 2005 and 6, they feel they were pitched a bill of goods that did not come through with this bylaw. So this is an effort to protect the people of that neighborhood who feel that the bylaw has not been protecting them these past 10 years. And we want to make it right. That's why we're here. To wrap up, I agree with our land use director and town council as far as the legal aspects of this. But really, the reason this is here is because we're trying to help people of that community. And that's all.
Thank you.
Paulette Van 282 Pleasant Street. I've been following all the meetings on cable and whatnot. I live in Pleasant Street's considered the part of the Wayland District. And I think the purpose of all of this is to try to stop the density of the building on lots in the Wayland District, or any district in town. People are coming in and with acreage, and we say, you can put 20, no, I want a permit, I want 27. Okay, we'll give you, well, maybe I want 32, I changed my mind. That's what's happening with that parcel on Prospect Street, that's what happened with the parcel on Wayland Road. It goes on and on and on. So we need a definitive bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alonso.
I wanted to wait till the caucus. I wanted to make sure that the planning board was solid and presenting this as they were before this, at their meeting, before this special town meeting. They are the proper body to bring this kind of bylaw forward. They have done their vetting, they've had public hearings, they've done the research, they have consulted after some points were brought up with town council. Town council has given here publicly his opinion, he's given the same opinion to us in private, but ultimately the ability to remove the bylaw is up to this body. It's the proper body to do it, and just because there's a disagreement on a particular point, the town council says one thing, the land director sides with them, I happen to agree with them, but the zoning official does not, I mean, there's going to be those disagreements. Don't let the matter of how passionate somebody is about their disagreement sway the fact that it's up to this body to remove it. We've done our due diligence. There has been issues brought forward from the public about this before, about the bylaw before. It is a perfect timing to do it. The planning board thought so. As an elected body, I support them, and as such, I support this article. I would encourage people to vote in favor of it.
And can we get a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen? Are they ready to vote? Excellent. And Finance, we're going to need that from you as well. Anyone else at the microphone need to address? Yes, young lady.
Yeah, I'd like Jill Norman to speak, please.
Ooh, how come you weren't down in the visitors section, Ms. Normandy? That's all right. When you go back to your seat, if you would be so kind, to sit over here on my far right where the visitors are. That way we'll know you're not a voter. But go ahead.
I will do so.
Just tell us who you are, please.
Hi, Jill Normandin. I own actually a property on 321. I'm not a resident, but I did develop a property across the street from this one particular piece of land that's about 3 acres. And it starts at Lake Whalum and goes up Hollis Hill. I don't know if anyone's watched the planning board meetings, but if you saw the buildings are trying to shove down the throats of the people on Hollis Hill, you understand why the planning board has brought this issue up. And I'm sorry, I'm in place, when you bulldoze a half acre on Lake Whalum, I don't think you should get another building permit, no matter how nice your units are, et cetera. I think they do provide service to the community. But when you took a bulldozer to the waterfront, which no other person in Lunenburg or Westminster, or wherever you're from, could do, I wouldn't give you another permit either. So, sorry guys, just my feeling. I think it's just really important that people get involved on trying to protect Lake Whalum. Lake Whalum in the district is not a dumping ground for high-density buildings, and that's what it's become. And what's more confusing is Lake Whalum's a protected water source. So the latest developments that have come up before the planning board are 22, the last thing I knew of was a 22, 37.5 foot height building on a 3-acre parcel in a residential neighborhood. This is not Route 13, this is not Whalum Park, this is on Hollis Hill. It's 90% boarded by residents. By the way, these residences are 12 feet high, 17 feet high, and the owner of this property won't give it up. They won't relax some of the, I mean, it's either 20 or nothing, or whatever it is. And the residents feel defenseless, they feel beaten. You've got Gary Lord, you've got Tri-Town, you've got Emerald Place, you've got Emerald Place Development, you've got Emerald Place bulldozing the waterfront. Everyone's scratching their head, by the way, Mr. Emerald Place. I can't do that. Why are you getting away with it? But it's a really important piece of land to the people who live there. They're landlocked, and putting a 300-foot, 40-foot high monolith of vinyl in that neighborhood on Hollis Hill, a very residential neighborhood, doesn't make any sense. So if you watch some of these planning board meetings, or you're concerned about what's happening to the high-density nature of Whalum, get involved, and let's change this law. This law is very subjective, but according to people involved with the owner, the first part of this bylaw doesn't apply to them. So it's a very dangerous document for people with residences in this area. Please get involved. And I would just support this amendment that's been brought by the planning board. What's been proposed for this 3-acre development is ridiculous. And an 8-year-old would know that.
Thank you. Ms. Norman. Just so I don't mix up my voters from my non-voters. Sir.
Richard Mayu, Laurel Lane. I was just wondering with what she brought up, removing, it would have seemed to me, number one, that a map of the Whalum Overlay District up here on the board would have been mighty helpful. I don't know whether it was a matter of not having the new technology to be able to do that, but that should have been up there. Secondly, whether it would have been nice if there were like a new overlay district or amendment or something. It seems like we're just taking this out and so it goes back to the old, whatever the zoning rules govern that. will removing this stop the development on that parcel on Pond Street? Will it stop the development up where the Lake Lodge was? Will it have any impact on present zoning, planning board things that are going on under the overlay district? It would seem to me that those will continue no matter what.
Okay, so let's let, I'm getting ready to address you. Yeah, I know you want to speak.
You always say you gotta be recognized.
I know, and I'm going to recognize you. And I'm a voter. I'm going to recognize you. Give me a minute. So on at both sides of this issue, since he's the moving party, in my discretion, I'll let him go first.
If there were applications that were filed prior to the first advertising of the public hearing for, if there were projects that were in front of the planning board prior to the first advertising of the public hearing to remove the district, they would most likely move forward. There are currently no projects proposed. Any future projects on property within the district would not be allowed to move forward because the district would no longer exist. They would be filed under the existing underlying hard zoning district, such as they are. So areas adjacent to Emerald Place are zoned commercially. Areas on the, I guess that's the east side of the Rotary, north of Whale Lake, are in residential A districts. So they would be subject to the resident A zoning.
Okay, Mr. Savage. Now stated the question.
The Residence A zoning is actually what he said is accurate. If you take the overlay away, the underlying district, and this happens to be in an underlying district that is residential. But as we all know from the Hollis Hills projects, which the town spent 10 years in court of your taxpayers' money, had all the legitimate issues, or we wouldn't have fought it for 10 years. We were right in our eyes as a town. We were right in our eyes, but we lost. And there's a 40B that's going to be built right on the back at the Lake Lodge and all that back property. And there's a 40B that's already been granted right down the street at the Whalum Apartments. And if you get rid of the overlay district, there are other types of developments that can go there regardless of the zoning. So read between the lines. There are other developments that will go there. The planning board allowed 10.6 per acre. They allowed a 40-unit building to be granted before modification on 2.7 acres. I think a 40B would at least get 10.6, at least. They don't have to go by any ruling. And that can be built. You got one coming in the back, you got one coming up. I mean, it's up to the developer to decide what he wants to build. And there are other types of projects that are exempt under Mass General Law that can build it.
You answered it. Where's the selectman at?
Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen recommends approval.
Well, you want to tell us the vote?
The vote was 4-1.
4-1. FinCom.
Finance Committee votes 5-0 to pass over.
To pass it or to pass over it? Pass over it is not before us. What's before us is to pass or fail.
The Finance Committee does not recommend approval.
Does not recommend approval. Okay. Yes.
Courtney Martineau, 30 Pond Street. I know we've been on this topic for a long period of time, so I will be brief. I have attended several of the meetings of the planning board discussing the parcel of land that is being talked about, and I have to tell you that they have come back. The planning board has heard what the residents are saying. They are fighting to help us. Pond Street is a very small road. We're talking about adding more and more traffic to that small area. We're not saying we don't want to develop it. Single-story houses, that fits what's in the community right there, that goes with the neighborhood. Talking about adding very tall, condo-like buildings are what we're saying we have a problem with in that area. We want development, but we want it to match our neighborhood. And I think the planning board has done a really great job at hearing what we've been saying at these meetings, and the fact that they brought it here really shows their commitment. I understand both sides of the argument and the debate, but I just wanted to say thank you to the planning board for listening to the residents. Jill Normaden, thank you as well for speaking.
Thank you. We're ready to vote. Yep. This is a zoning change. so it requires 2/3. Now, you don't have to yell at me, it's the number of people voting, and Ms. Norman, you can't vote, and the two people who I also moved off to the side, I appreciate it. In the future, I hope you'll come back, sit right up in the front, but you guys can't vote, okay? You three things, and anybody with a white tag can't vote. So all those in favor of the article, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to the article, please signify by saying no.
No.
I believe 2/3 passed, but, okay. You're supposed to stand and say I doubt it, so I know what I said. Let's be clear. Okay. Let's see. There's at least 7. Good. Okay, so my counters come down, okay? My counters come down to the front. We've got people on the left. Don't forget to go all the way up. We got counters in the middle. Don't forget to get finance and selectmen. And when you're done with your counting, please come up and announce it at one of the microphones. Hold up your cards, folks. That's how you're voting. Cards. Oh, excuse me. Kathy interrupted me. All those in favor of the article, please signify by holding up their card. When you're ready, just go up to a microphone and tell me if you're on the flag side or the middle. The center is being counted by, the selectmen are being counted by the center. Selectmen and finance by the center. Make sure your numbers agree, obviously. So what do I have over here?
Yes.
How many? 15. 1, 5 on my right. 1, 4 on my left.
Could the center put their cards up again?
Center, put them up nice and high so we can count them again. Please do. If you're in favor, sorry. Not yet. How many in the center?
20.
20, 20, in the center. Okay. Now, stay there, counters. All those opposed to the article, please signal by putting their cards up. On my right,
We're 12.
12 on the right are opposed. Now you can put your cards down on my right. Rest your hands. On my left, 12. And in the center, Okay, how many in the Senate?
32.
32 in the Senate. Now we'll wait for Kathy and her abacus to tell us what the totals are. 2/3 of the total who voted. 49 yes, 57 no. The article is defeated. Shall we move on to Article 11, Planning Board? Mr. Vernon.
Mr. Moderator, Adam Burning, 37 Goodbridge Street. I would move that we pass over Article 11.
And why would you like to pass over it, Mr. Vernon? I always ask.
The failure of Article 10 makes Article 11, 12, 13, and 14 irrelevant.
Stay right there, Mr. Vernon. All those in favor of passing over Article 11, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 12, then, Mr. Vernon.
I move to pass over Article 12.
And I assume there's a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. All those in favor of passing over Article 12, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. 13. Don't all leave. We have one more at the end. It's only going to take a few minutes, and I need a quorum.
I move to pass over Article 13.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of passing over Article 13, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. 14.
I move to pass over Article 14.
Is there a second? All those in favor of passing over Article 14, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We already passed Article 15, so we are on to Article 16. Mrs. Bertram, before everybody leaves.
I move the town vote to authorize a 10% local match towards the purchase of an agricultural preservation restriction approved by and to be held in common with the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources on Lanny Orchards, consisting of 78 acres, more or less, owned by Lanny Orchards, a partnership, Francesco Lanny, Gennaro Lanny, Mario Lanny, and Nicole Lanny, general partners, and located at 292 Chase Road, Lunenburg, Mass., and shown on Assessor's Map 162 as Parcel 38, and described in a deed with the Worcester Northern District Registry of Land Deeds in Book 1441, page 46, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to do all such other things as may be required or convenient to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain said agricultural preservation restriction or other interest therein connected therewith.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Selectmen, your recommendation?
Recommend approval.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Planning Board, did you take up this article? No? Okay.
Yes, you did.
Yes, they did. Well, then if you did, tell us your vote.
Planning Board recommends approval 5-0.
5-0. Thank you very much. You're going to tell us about this as your final presentation, Ms. LaFleur?
Yes, I will, and I will be brief. The APR program is a voluntary program which is intended to offer non-development alternatives to farmers and other owners of prime and state-important agricultural land who are faced with the decision regarding future use and disposition of their farms. The program offers to pay farmland owners the difference between the fair market value and the agricultural value of their land in exchange for a permanent deed restriction which precludes any use of the property that will have a negative impact on its agricultural viability. The program began as an act of the legislature in 1979. It was the first in the country and has since been used as a model across the country in other states. The program has permanently protected over 800 farms for a total land area of 68,000 acres. The program requires municipalities to contribute 20% of the value of the restriction, but that rate may be reduced down to as low as 10% based on activities taken or undertaken at the local level, which the state calls the municipal action criteria scoring. This gives bonus points to communities, and at this time, Lunenburg is only required to participate at a 10% contribution rate. This particular application was made first in 2012. And in April 2016, the town was put on notice that the State Department of Agricultural Resources proposed to purchase the APR. So it took between the end of 2012 until early 2016 before the property owner and the state came to an agreement on the appraised value of this particular restriction. The application was sent to the Agricultural Commission, the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Board to review, and all three bodies recommended in favor of the town participating in the purchase of the restriction. The appraised value of this particular APR is $580,000, and this land is 78 acres in size. The town's 10% share is $58,000, and because this was brought to our attention at the end of the last fiscal year, and because we had some surplus in the budget at the end of the fiscal year, we were able to set aside the $58,000. We're holding that right now. So that is the funding source that we would be using if town meeting voted to approve this particular APR. So there's no additional cost to the town. The funding is contained within last year's fiscal budget.
Thank you, Ms. LaFleur. Anyone questions on this article, comments? Yep, thank you.
I just have a question, Rhonda Lucio, 181 Reservoir Road. Why would eminent domain need to be used, and could we delete or eminent domain from the article?
Go ahead, Ms. LaFleur, or Town Council.
I can tell you that the motion was provided to us directly by the state through the Department of Agricultural Resources, and that is the legal motion that they're looking for the town to adopt.
Mr. Moderator?
Right.
The other thing that happens is that sometimes when they do a title search, they'll find something wrong with the title, and to take it by eminent domain clears that issue.
Anyone else? Declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 16, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. I got that one right. That concludes all of our business this evening. Thank you again, Ms. LaFleur, for all your years of service.
Yeah, that's the state, so they can get the. Oh, no, seriously.